The Ben Heck Show is brought to you by Element 14, the electronic design community where you can connect and collaborate with top engineers from around the world. Join now at element14.com.
Ben, what are you packing for?
Oh, well, this weekend Max and I are going to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo in Portland, Oregon.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, we're gonna hopefully interview a bunch of cool YouTubers. I've got a couple panels that I'm doing, and also the PlayStation prototype is gonna be there.
Are you gonna try to fix it?
Yes, we've got some CD-ROM drives that we're gonna take along and swap out into the unit. We're gonna see if we can get the Super Boss Gaiden homebrew game to work, and at the very least, maybe we can get an audio CD to work. So I've got this audio CD from the same era as the prototype to make sure it works.
Well, you know, I know Felix isn't going, but maybe you should take this instead so you can try to fix it.
Oh yeah, I can fix it. Thanks, Karen, that should come in very handy. All right, well, it's time to fly.
Amazing hacks.
Where are my dragons?
Inspired designs.
Oh, look, I knocked some hot glue loose.
Regrettable acting.
I want to live in a world with Star Wars again!
Each week, Element 14's The Ben Heck Show brings you innovative projects using electronics, engineering, and more.
Okay, so we were here only a few seconds and I ran into a YouTuber, the 8-Bit Guy, AKA David Murray. How's it going?
So far pretty good.
Yeah, so I really like your channel, especially the videos on computer graphics. So what inspired you to make those videos?
Well, mostly because there was always a lot of discussion about it on the internet, and there really wasn't any good explanation of how they work. And so I thought, well, why don't I finally once and for all explain it in a way that people can really understand. So.
Yeah, I didn't realize the Commodore had a 1 bit per pixel tile mode. I thought that was just on the Sinclair Spectrum. Okay, so you had the video where like, look at this beautiful drawing, and every cell, 8x8 cell, only has 2 colors in it.
Well, right, it is a 1 bit per pixel, I suppose, but it works out a little bit more than that because you have the color attribute. Yeah. So it's not exactly 1 bit, it's like 1 point something bit.
Right, but the Commodore has a mode like that, right?
Right.
Yeah, because I'd mostly, and that's a higher resolution mode, because otherwise you have like, what, 160 colors per line, because it's 2 bits per pixel?
No, the machine only has 16 colors. I think you meant 160 pixels per line.
Yes, okay, that's it. Because you have like the same thing with like the early Atari computers where it's kind of crunchy. Of course, the Commodore had more colors.
Yeah, most of the popular video games use the multicolor mode, which is the 160 pixels, because the colors are much more flexible in that mode.
Yeah, but before I'd seen the other mode in like the Sinclair Spectrum, which is like an amazingly cheap computer. Yeah, let's see, what other videos did you? Oh, I didn't watch it yet, but you were drag racing 2 electric cars. Is that correct? I did watch the whole video about where you tried to take a road trip with just the BMW, right? Yeah.
They're a little unusual for my channel, but I thought some people might find it interesting. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's still electronics, and I mean, sometimes you can get resistance when you veer too far from your normal path. But I think it's great variety. Like when we go on the road, a lot of times people are like, "Why? What are you doing? Just all we want to see is you soldering."
Oh, I know. Like I got a lot of hate mail for those videos. A lot of people say they unsubscribe because of that, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. The subscriber numbers keep going up.
You don't have to watch every video that someone makes.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people that logged on there and really, really complained about it, and I didn't really understand that because I'm like, I watch 5 or 6 other YouTube channels, and when they post a video I'm not interested in, I just don't watch it.
Exactly.
I don't have to purposely get on there with a vengeance just to write some mean, comment about why did you make this video.
Yeah, I'll have people say to me, they're like, well, I haven't watched every video. I'm like, well, you don't have to. All right, well, we'll have a link below for David's channel. You should go check it out. I entered the vendor hall and was immediately impressed with how jam-packed the room was. It's one of those shows where it's impossible to see everything in just one day. I eventually began browsing game collections with one goal in mind. So I'm trying to find Road Rash, the original Road Rash, on Sega Genesis. And I won't stop until I find it, unless I run out of time. Spare no expense. Look, it's an 8-inch floppy disk drive. Oh, I'm gonna try to pick it up. Oh my God! Actually, it's not that heavy, but Oh, you get a close-up of that? Oh, sorry, I couldn't resist. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's so awesome. The best way to store 96 kilobytes of data. This is almost as good as that disk drive we just saw. You can save your programs to cassette tape. You know, back in the 80s, floppy disk drive would cost as much as the computer itself, if not more. So for a lot of people, this was the only way they could load programs. I'm gonna buy a Game Boy to replace the one that we tore apart to make that giant Game Boy, because that was my Game Boy, and now I only have like 2 Game Boys, so I need to replace it so I have 3 Game Boys. Here you go, sir. Here is money.
Thanks for the money.
You know, I think the Master System failed solely on box art. Really? Who sees this in the store and is like, that's what I want? So this is a Dragon's Lair, a classic arcade game that had a Laserdisc running it. And the monitor on top here is kind of an interesting link to the past. This game was so popular back in the early 80s that they would often put monitors on top because there was such a crowd around the game, you couldn't see the game being played, but the monitor on top allowed bystanders to see what was going on. Whoa, this is insane. It's an actual Odyssey 1 for sale. This was the first home game console. It didn't actually have a CPU. These things were just jumpers that would change the game. I've never actually seen one of these for sale before. $100? I wonder how hard it would be to get working. Look at these controllers. So the audio capabilities of the Nintendo using the PCM was actually a lot higher than people realize. Most of the games limited it because of the memory that was available, but if you actually run at full speed and don't have much else going on, you can actually, this is playing off a Nintendo. This is PCM audio off of a cartridge. That's from DuckTales. So I found Skitchin, which is Road Rash with rollerblades. Close, but no cigar. Although I hadn't found my Road Rash game quite yet, it was time to begin work on the Nintendo PlayStation drive repair. In order to have the highest chance for success, I brought a few replacement parts along with me. The first is a new old stock CD-ROM drive that should be a drop-in replacement for the original. I also brought a few laser diode assemblies, and if all else fails, a similar drive that I pulled out of an old Sony boombox from the early 90s. I let Dan Diebold take apart the unit because he's the best at it. So here is the juicy CD-ROM drive. Now, if you remember in the previous episode, it ejected the disk and spun up the disk, but it couldn't read anything. We think the laser is the part that's dead. So I'm gonna try to replace that. And then hopefully we should be able to read a disk. I brought one of the top albums of 1991, so it's, you know, era specific. Let's give this a try. We have a metal plate here. It has the controls. So we're gonna need this plate because it matches the original unit. I'm gonna remove this. That was the magnet coming loose. I'll just set this over here for now. Okay, so here's the inside of the drive. Now, thanks to some helpful folks on Twitter, we were able to narrow down the assembly that would match, or what we think will match. It's a KSS 360A laser drive assembly. And this is a NOS one, new old stock, that I found online. And yes, it is the same thing. So that's good. So I want to keep this as original as possible, but I also want to make it work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the control board from this drive and put it over here. I do see one difference. The new drive has a plug here for the ribbon cable, whereas their drive doesn't. So hopefully that's not too big of a deal. Something else I'm a little concerned about. If you might remember in our original episode, we messed around with the potentiometers a little bit. These 3 right here. So if we put them out of whack, we may have to dial them back in. If that's necessary, I have my oscilloscope with me. My portable one, not my big one. Yeah, so take a look. The main difference is how they've linked this ribbon cable here and here. But I mean, everything else looks the same. See, we have all of the same connections. Actually, I'm gonna count this here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yay! So this is better than working with humans because you don't have to keep their blood flow going. I always like that about electronics, you know, they can stay inert for decades, but all you have to do is put them back together and maybe they'll do something. So again, this is the board from the prototype unit. I did find a board very much like this inside of the early 90s Sony boombox. However, I'm not going to use that if I don't have to. Hey, look at that, it fits. This is an older console. In the past, they made fewer custom parts than they do now. I mean, you didn't say, hey, I want a custom chip, Intel. That didn't happen back then. So everything was as off the shelf as possible. Oh, wait a minute, I'm jinxing myself. If I put all the screws back in, then it won't work. If I don't, then it might work. All right, so this is the original drive. We're gonna just set it aside. We can change out the tray to keep it as accurate as possible, but right now I just wanna give it the best chance of working as possible. Because really, the individual parts aren't really what's special. It's the circuitry and what the console is. All right, so the drive itself, the plastic chassis, appears to be a standard Sony thing, which means this faceplate probably varies by system. Okay, so this is our NOS one. NOS, new old stock. Nib, mint in box. Right, so let's set this in place. I'm actually not gonna screw it down. Oh, look at that, it fits. I'm not gonna screw it down because I wanna actually try to look at the laser light. Okay, that's maybe enough, we don't know. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna try a CD. That plugged in, power plug, that would probably help. Okay, all right, so this is just a test to make sure it's doing what it did before. Oh, there it is. Now if it catches on fire, stop the camera so they don't sue me. Oh, there's a 0 on the screen, that's great. It still says no disc, it didn't spin up. Didn't it? It spun up back at the shop though, didn't it? Yep, definitely. What changed? The new old stock drive wasn't spinning up for some reason, so I moved on to plan B, which was to replace the drive with the old drive we found from an early 90s Sony boombox. This one seemed to function mechanically at least, but just like the original drive, the laser diode was dead. I then tried swapping out the laser assembly of this drive with the new old stock one, but that didn't work either. I needed a break, so I headed back into the vendor hall to try to get Road Rash. Hey, I found another YouTube star, one of my favorites actually. Sorry, other people I talked to. This is LGR, Lazy Game Reviews, also known as Clint Basinger.
Yes.
That's correct. So it's great seeing you at the show.
It is great to finally meet you.
Yeah, I mean, I really like your channels, especially the two things I like the most, the tech tales that you do, I think is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it takes a lot of research, I'm sure, to do that, and you do it so well.
Yeah.
So do you have any cool tech tales in the works for the future? I watch every one of them.
I do, and you know, they do take a while. So I've
Right.
got some that have been in the works for several months now. One on America Online.
Oh.
That will be fun.
Didn't that start off as like the Sega Genesis cartridge, or it was some console
It kind
online
of did,
thing,
yeah.
wasn't
There
it?
was Quantum Link or Q-Link.
Right.
And then, you know, they did a few of the other things, including one with Sega. And then they've done so many things since then. And I think it's kind of interesting. A lot of people don't really think about what happened to AOL after dial-up.
Yeah.
And they're kind of have their hands in a lot of stuff still.
Well, yeah, now they own like, didn't they merge with another large company? Like,
They did, yeah.
yeah, and they do like Engadget and all those web blogs.
Right.
So.
They owned a ton of online media presence. So
How many of those discs do you think they actually made? Do you think you could build a house from AOL discs? I mean, you're into old computer stuff.
I think I had enough of those discs at one point to build a house. I actually collected them. And for some
I'm not
reason,
surprised.
I found my collection recently too, but
Right.
most of them broke. So I would take them and I would thumbtack them to my ceiling to make designs
Out of the AOL discs?
out of AOL discs.
Yeah.
And you know, floppy disks, I would always rewrite those too. You know, because it's like, oh, free discs.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
that was really cool back in the day.
It was.
I was collecting Atari, what was it? Super Mario Duck Hunt cartridges.
Yes.
Because when I was a teenager, I worked at a Funcoland, which is actually one of the coolest jobs I ever had. And so you could get those cartridges for like a nickel. And I think my brother-in-law found them at my parents' place like long ago. And it's like, because I was gonna build a chair out of it. But now I should just resell them because
Yeah.
those games are all worth so much money. It's insane.
People are always saying I should build like a throne out of my PC game collection because I've got enough spare large boxes
Of games that you don't care about or
yeah,
things you
it's
have
just,
copies
you know,
of.
oh, I could just stack those up and make. I should do that at some point. But
I bought one of those Atari landfill cartridges for some reason because I just had to have it. And then I was like so surprised when it smelled like a landfill. I don't know what I was expecting.
yeah, it's like, oh, this should smell.
You'd
like
think
the
after
80s.
30,
Yeah.
well, you think after 30 years, you know?
Yeah, it's buried too, right? So it's under there.
Nope. Somehow it still did. What is your favorite classic IBM PC computer model, or what do you like the best from the old days?
If I had to pick just one classic PC, I mean, it would be the original, the PC 5150, 1981.
You got one recently, right?
I did actually. I've got a few now, and so the whole range, the PC, the XT, the AT, and I just love that whole series of like classic industrial design where IBM's like, this is what the future is, and yet it's so utilitarian and IBM. It's like the most boring thing, but it's great.
Yeah. I find that like when we were working with that PlayStation prototype. It's like
Yeah.
if that was a never before seen prototype now, everything would be glued together and sonically welded, and like you wouldn't be able to take it apart. But like the old things, it was so obvious, like it just comes apart and it goes back together. It's so satisfying, and we've kind of lost that with electronics.
I was surprised how few like cheats they did and stuff in there too. I mean, I watched the teardowns of those, and it was impressive how almost final it looked.
Yeah,
like
right-
it was very far along.
Right down to the there on the top of it, there was a separate piece of plastic where the cartridge slot goes.
Right.
And I'm like, why wasn't this part of the mold? And then what I realized was it was for American or Japanese Super Famicom games, because they're
Yeah.
different shape. So instead of having entirely new tooling, you would just change that one little part. So yeah, it was pretty much ready to go. All right, well,
All right.
Clint, it was great talking with you, and enjoy the rest of
Absolutely.
the show.
Thanks.
Dun, 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 dun. Spared no expense. We found a whole bunch of Zelda stuff. I'm going to send a picture to Karen to make her jealous. Unlimited Zelda. So this is one of the earliest Nintendo cartridges, and it actually has a Famicom version of the game inside of it and a converter. And if you feel them, you can feel it's heavier than other cartridges, which means it has a converter. Check it out, it's a Funcoland sleeve. I used to work at this place back when I was 19 years old. That was a really fun job. See, fun. This is the Japanese Nintendo. The controllers were hardwired into the system, and controller 2 had a microphone on it. Isn't that weird? That's so bizarre. Wow, look at this. Evil Dead action figure. My joke I like to tell people is that my Nintendo collection is doing better than my 401k. Ba-dum-ching.
That is good.
I'm secretly taking stock of the most reasonably priced copy of Contra, and this one at $35 is the most reasonable price now. It's like, this can be upwards of $50. So remember, go back in time and tell your younger self to save your games and save your boxes. Hey, here's a fun video game history lesson. So here's a Japanese Nintendo Famicom cartridge, and here's an American Nintendo cartridge. Why are they so different? Look at the size difference. Well, if you take apart an American cartridge, there's hardly anything in it. But in America, there's a bad taste in everyone's mouth from the Atari 2600 and the video game crash. So in the American market, they deliberately made these things really large so they'd be different than existing video game cartridges and felt more like a VHS tape. So this is mostly hollow. Okay, I continued stalking YouTube people and I found Metal Jesus Rocks, aka
Hey.
Jason. Does everyone on YouTube just watch everyone else's channels, I guess?
You know what? I'm a big fan of the retro gaming community in general.
Right.
And so I watch other people not only just to get ideas for myself, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, a lot of us live around the same area. So we're either from Portland or Seattle, a lot of us.
Okay.
Yeah, Seattle is a huge hotbed for video games.
Well, yeah, Nintendo and Microsoft.
There's 300 video game companies there. I mean, it's crazy. Apple literally just bought an entire city block.
That makes sense.
In downtown Seattle, and I guess it's mostly for games.
So that's why there's so many people here that like retro games.
And that's maybe the reason why so many like prototypes show up in the Seattle area. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah, you got the American Nintendo 64 disc drive, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's release ready prototype for the U.S. market.
When was that supposed to come out, if it would have come out?
I'm not a super historian on it, but I believe it's like 1999, 2000, something like that, which is so
Okay.
late for a floppy disk-based system.
Yeah,
It
and-
would have never have taken off.
And that was pretty much near the end of the Nintendo 64's lifespan
Yeah.
as well.
And the discs look very similar to like a zip drive, which you remember, right?
Oh, yeah, those things are awesome.
I know, totally. And so that was, I think, what they're going for.
I could fit 100 megabytes on this?
I know.
You kids just don't know how good you have it.
So this expo, like, how epic is it? Well, I mean, look,
We
it's
have
crazy.
one, yeah, we have one in Wisconsin. We don't have a nice big convention center like this. This is like 5 times bigger.
Yeah.
We've barely made a dent in this
vendor hall. It's awesome. I'm going to pick up some cartridges.
All right. Dude, Atari 2600, you have to get Hero.
I have that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good answer.
I have a pretty good 2600 collection. And actually my Nintendo collection, I realized that I'm like, oh my God, I have Mighty Final Fight. I have, what's that one with the bunny? Bucky O'Hare.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, it's really awesome when you can look through your collection like, oh, I have a $200 game.
I know. I was just walking down this hall. I forget what game it was, but it was some common game to me. And I think I forget what it was. It was Castlevania. Something I paid $8 for years ago.
Castlevania 4 is really expensive.
And it's like, holy crap, it's $100. I'm like, when did that happen?
It's like if you can get Contra for $35, that's a deal. It's insane. My joke is that my Nintendo collection is doing better than my 401k. He's gonna have to edit all the times I make that joke out of the show. All right, it was good talking with you.
Nice meeting you, man.
Enjoy the show.
After exploring the vendor hall and playing a little pinball, I decided to get back to the repair work. I tried the last thing I could think of, which was replacing the laser diode on the new old stock drive. To my surprise, it started to spin up and was actually doing something different. All right, Max and I have been doing some tests. We actually have some improvement going here. There's 3 potentiometers on this motherboard. We don't know exactly what they do, and we have a service manual, but it's for an old boombox, and it has a different number of potentiometers. But it looks like the one on the left affects the speed at which the disc spins. The one in the middle affects the head moving back and forth, and the third one, we're not really sure. But we actually have it now showing the total number of tracks that are on this CD, and we also got it to go to a track and start playing. We couldn't hear any music, but it did start counting up the numbers. And then we also noticed we were able to go to track 14, and the head, sure enough, moved to the outside of the disc. So we are getting closer to whatever the problem is. I continued to do more testing, adjusting each potentiometer, and checking the result, but I still couldn't get any music to play. I also tried putting in the homebrew game Super Boss Gaiden, but that didn't work either. The last thing I tried was starting a Nintendo cartridge game while the CD drive was running. This led to a discovery. Okay, we discovered something. If you run the CD while a game is playing, it switches over to the CD audio completely. You know, it could be... Wait. I'm getting a transmission from aliens here. We did some more tests, but ended up running out of time before getting the unit fully functional. Even so, progress was made, and the story of the Nintendo PlayStation will continue. I think the next step would be to see why the audio CD wasn't playing. It was running the tracks, but we couldn't hear anything. It might be a problem with a DAC, a digital to audio converter. Anyway, to conclude this episode, we're going to have a chat with Pat the NES punk and watch the exciting conclusion to my Road Rash hunt.
Oh, you know, we could argue about SNES.
I go by what Nintendo termed it. It's NES and SNES. That's how I go.
Seems like it's faster to say SNES. You ready?
It's what's accurate. No, it's quicker. Come on, you're an engineer.
No, wait,
what's
no.
accurate?
But it takes so long to say those letters.
But that's not what Nintendo says. It's NES and SNES. Like, I got to go by what the master says.
So you are Pat the NES punk. So how did you become the punk? Why are you a punk?
It's really the attitude. It's not really because I listen to punk music. It's,
right.
Usually when dates are going bad for me, so yeah, you're kind of a punk. It's like,
right.
Yeah, well, you know, I kind of get under people's skin sometimes, a little acerbic, you could say. So
then it just stuck?
Well, when I was thinking of the YouTube show, I just needed a moniker.
Right.
That I wanted to keep my own name, Pat, in there. And
that makes sense.
Pat the NES punk. It's almost alliterative a little bit.
Oh, and then did they call you that when you were on Pawn Stars? You were on Pawn Stars once, right?
I was on Pawn Stars.
Is that a sore subject?
It's not a sore subject, but certain members of the retro collecting community frowned upon that. I saw it as a moment of education and hey, have fun on a cable show. And they saw it as, oh, you're spotlighting this hobby. It was already blown up for years and years.
Oh, and they're like, you raised prices.
I raised prices in a game that there's only like 30 of in the world. And it's like, no, I didn't. It was always going up anyway. It's like,
you know what I've noticed with the prices, because I know you and Ian talk about this a lot. Nostalgia is always whatever a 30-year-old or a 50-year-old liked 20 years ago.
Sure. To me, at least for video game generations, it's 3 generations back. That's why I was looking at it, which is roughly 15, could be 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
That's why I looked at it. So right now, people are really nostalgic for like GameCube prices are really on the rise.
Oh, it's already
right
the
now.
GameCube. I thought
GameCube.
N64.
N64 went up, and now it's like GameCube. I think
Really?
I think it's what happens is whenever someone gets into their mid-20s to late 20s,
Yep.
and you don't have a family yet,
But you have a job and you have money.
disposable income, you may or may not have a mortgage. What do I spend money on? Stocks? No, old-ass video games I had when I was a kid 15 years ago. And that's basically how the cycle goes. Because the first wave of retro game collectors was actually in about the mid-90s or early 90s, and they were Atari 2600 guys.
Yep.
Those guys are now like in their early to mid-50s.
And now they care about motorcycles and mortgage and divorce and college payments for their kids.
And maybe pinball games where there could be some shenanigans.
They got
going
a
on
lot
in
of
the
money
community.
for pinball.
So that's how it happens. So I'm thinking in like 15 years, all money for motorcycles, and NES collecting might die out. However, the difference is this: Nintendo's still alive.
Yes.
Atari's basically name only at this point.
Right.
So Nintendo still has successful franchises that you'll have a new Mario and Zelda game every 2 years.
Right.
So that's the main difference between Atari collecting and NES is that Nintendo is still popular.
Right.
And the fact that the characters are iconic: Mario, Donkey Kong, Zelda, Samus from Metroid. Atari, you have whatever the hell the thing is in Centipede that shoots a centipede. It's not
Adam Sandler.
yes, exactly. Good job. They're not mascots. They're not video game mascots.
Right.
Pac-Man is not Atari. That's Namco. People seem to confuse what exactly Atari is.
Yes.
Atari
Most
is,
of the top games were licensed or made by Activision.
Yeah, Atari is Missile Command. There's no
Yeah.
character for that.
Well, when they make the Missile Command movie, eventually they'll make a character. Yeah.
Warlords. There's no character. There's no iconic franchise or merchandise.
So you're
like
saying
that.
it's the IP and the characters that really make Nintendo stuff more valuable than other waves of collectability in the past.
Absolutely. I mean, and that, you see kids walking around nowadays will have Mario shirts on. They're not going to have a Centipede shirt on.
Do you talk about this in your book?
I talk about some of it. What a segue. Wow, I didn't have to plug it myself. It's Ultimate Nintendo Guide to the NES Library. And it's a reference guide. It reviews every game released on the system between 1985 and 1995. Thanks for bringing it up, Ben. I appreciate that.
I'm good at this. So this is awesome.
It's
in full color.
All the information, yes, full color. Gutenberg led the way there. It has genre, release date, developer, publisher, number of players, special features.
This is every game that was made?
Every game even has the new
Smells nice too.
It has even the European exclusive releases, unlicensed games, the licensed games. It has accessories in there in the back. It has some articles about like the Tengen Nintendo lawsuits in there.
Yep.
Talking about unlicensed Wisdom Tree Bible games. Did you know there were 7 Bible games on the NES?
Well, there's a lot of things from the Bible. Might as well mine that unlicensed theme.
You want to make money? You tap into that market. On the NES, there you go. There's even weird stuff like the anti-drug game Wally Bear and the No Game. There's Contra
Force,
which is like the redheaded stepchild of the Contra family.
I rented that game like when I was 16, thought it was terrible, and now it's expensive.
It's not terrible. It's 3 stars according to a certain NES guidebook.
Really?
Above average. You gotta learn how to play it. It's not Contra. Here's the thing. It wasn't meant to be a Contra game. They sort of slapped the name onto it.
Oh, like Mario 2.
That's
in
another
America.
conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ben.
There it is. Yes. Thanks to Christian, I have found Road Rash, the best one. It's like Roadhouse on a motorcycle. Yeah, all right, I'll totally buy that. There you go. Oh, yeah.
Is that the Road Rash that has Soundgarden on it?
I'm back.
You're back!
Did you miss us?
You did. So Ben, what was your favorite retro game that you found?
Well, I picked up a couple things. I got Road Rash.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Oh, no.
Did that hurt?
The Sega Genesis game Road Rash with the motorcycles.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been looking for that one for a while. I grabbed a copy of the original Zelda, which I didn't have. $20. It was actually a really
That's
good
a good
price
deal.
for that game. Yeah, usually it's more like 35. What else did I get? Oh, I got one of those new FPGA reproduction Nintendos, the AVS NES. It's really cool. So if we ever do a Nintendo night, we can all play that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What is your favorite retro video game? Let us know in the Element 14 community on element14.com/TBHS.
You can also go there to read about other upcoming episodes, builds, and special events. We'll see you next time. Let's play some video games. Oh, I thought of a song called War Horse for Battlefield 1. And it's kind of like a country western song. It's like, War Horse, galloping through the country in 1918. He's the meanest horse you ever seen. He'll fight in wars and he'll be here by your side, and he'll be your friend until the day he died. War Horse. He can drive over tanks, he can drive through the rain, he can drive through everything including pain. War Horse. You can shoot him 8 times with your machine gun. He'll keep running just for fun. War Horse. Archduke Ferdinand got killed the other day. Then we got sent off to
France. That doesn't rhyme. I saw him standing there, my trusty steed, Warhorse. Yeah, see, it's pretty catchy. The Ben Heck Show is brought to you by Element 14, the electronic design community where you can connect and collaborate with top engineers from around the world. Join now at element14.com.